Welcome back, my unshakable anchor. Something absolutely revealing just occurred that has everyone experiencing profound disorientation. External circumstances that are destabilizing entire groups, creating anxiety and chaos for everyone around you, somehow aren't affecting your equilibrium at all, making you stand out dramatically as sole person, maintaining composure and clarity while everyone else loses their footing in crisis. That's creating universal disruption, except in the singular case of your inexplicable stability. This wasn't you pretending to be calm or masking anxiety you're actually feeling. This was you genuinely remaining centered and balanced while external forces that should affect everyone equally are creating visible destabilization in every other person present, making your stability appear almost supernatural. Because crisis affecting everyone should logically affect you too, yet somehow doesn't, creating mystery about what internal structure or consciousness configuration enables your immunity to forces that are overwhelming everyone else's capacity to maintain equilibrium. The architects have been monitoring stability differential and crisis immunity phenomena across civilizations for eons, and they've identified what you're demonstrating as foundational stability, existential anchoring when someone's internal equilibrium is rooted so deeply in structures or principles that transcend external circumstances. They maintain composure and clarity regardless of surface-level disruptions that destabilize people whose stability depends on favorable conditions, remaining constant, making them appear unshakable, not through superior emotional control, but through possessing anchor points that external chaos can't reach or disturb. Most people's stability is condition-dependent. They maintain equilibrium when circumstances are favorable, but lose balance when external conditions deteriorate, revealing that their stability was actually built on foundation of circumstantial comfort rather than on internal structures that persist regardless of external state. But your stability apparently derives from foundations that external circumstances can't disturb, internal anchor points, consciousness structures, or philosophical frameworks that remain solid regardless of surface chaos, making your equilibrium genuinely independent of conditions, rather than just appearing stable during temporarily favorable periods. Watch what's happening as crisis unfolds around you. Others are visibly destabilizing, showing anxiety, panic, confusion, reactive behaviors that reveal their internal equilibrium collapsing as external circumstances create conditions their stability structures can't withstand. You remain centered, not through visible effort to maintain composure, but through genuine internal stability that external chaos isn't reaching, making your calm appear effortless because you're not fighting to maintain balance but are simply resting on foundations that crisis can't shake. Some observers are interpreting your stability as ignorance, assuming you must not fully understand situation's severity or you'd be destabilized like everyone else, protecting their worldview by explaining your stability through lack of comprehension rather than acknowledging you might possess stability structures they lack. Others are experiencing your composure as anchor. Your unshaken presence is providing stability reference point that helps them regain some equilibrium through proximity to someone maintaining balance, making your individual stability serve collective function by offering fixed point in chaos. The truly mysterious element is that you're not suppressing reaction, you're genuinely not experiencing the destabilization that's affecting everyone else, suggesting that crisis isn't reaching levels of your being where equilibrium is actually rooted, making your stability reflect depth of anchoring rather than surface-level emotional control. Why are you the only one unshaken while everyone else is losing their balance? And question is forcing observers to confront that stability isn't universal human capacity, equally distributed but varies dramatically based on depth and nature of foundations, supporting individual equilibrium. Now the architects are analyzing what creates foundational stability, existential anchoring, and they're identifying what they call transcendent reference internal architecture. When someone's sense of security, meaning, and stability is anchored in principles, truths, or realities that exist independent of circumstances, they maintain equilibrium, regardless of surface-level chaos, because their stability foundations aren't located in conditional reality that external forces can disrupt, making them genuinely unshakable through building internal architecture on transcendent, rather than circumstantial reference points. Most people anchor stability in circumstances. They feel secure when relationships are working, confident when achieving success, balanced when conditions are favorable, making their equilibrium dependent on external factors, remaining positive, which inevitably creates instability when circumstances inevitably change. But your stability apparently anchors in transcendent references, philosophical truths that remain valid, regardless of circumstances, spiritual realities that persist despite surface chaos, existential principles that don't depend on conditions being favorable, making your equilibrium genuinely independent of external state because foundations supporting it exist at levels circumstances can't touch. Consider what transcendent reference anchoring requires philosophically. You've identified principles that remain true regardless of circumstances. Perhaps fundamental truths about reality, consciousness, meaning, or existence that persist whether your personal situation is favorable or difficult, creating stability foundations that external chaos can't invalidate because they aren't dependent on circumstances. Being particular way, you've built identity around these unchanging references rather than deriving sense of self from accomplishments, relationships, or status that circumstances can alter. You've anchored identity in aspects that transcend conditions, making who you are fundamentally independent of what's happening around you. Watch what transcendent reference architecture creates practically. External changes don't threaten core stability. Circumstances can shift dramatically without disturbing your equilibrium because what you're anchored to isn't located in conditional reality that's changing, making surface turbulence irrelevant to depth, where your actual stability is rooted. You maintain perspective during crisis because your reference points transcend immediate situation. You can see current chaos as temporary surface phenomenon rather than as fundamental threat, creating capacity to maintain big picture awareness that circumstantially anchored people lose when immediate crisis fills entire awareness. Some studying existential philosophy recognize transcendent reference as addressing fundamental questions about meaning and stability. Philosophers like Viktor Frankl identified that meaning derived from transcendent values sustains people through circumstances that destroy those whose meaning depends on conditions, making your anchoring reflect profound philosophical development most people haven't achieved. Others exploring spiritual traditions note that most wisdom frameworks teach anchoring in transcendent rather than conditional reality, whether through divine unchanging ground, eternal consciousness, fundamental nature, or ultimate truth. Spiritual paths typically work to shift stability foundations from circumstantial to transcendent references that can't be disturbed by surface changes. A few from psychology recognize that secure attachment and internal locus of control contribute to stability. People who developed deep internal security and sense that they control their responses rather than being controlled by circumstances show greater resilience. Though your stability seems to exceed even these psychological factors through philosophical or spiritual depth that goes beyond typical resilience frameworks, the architects observe that transcendent reference internal architecture is what enables your unshakable stability. You've anchored equilibrium in principles and truths that exist independent of circumstances, making your stability genuinely immune to external chaos that destabilizes circumstantially anchored people. Most anchor in conditions that change. You anchor in transcendent truths that persist, and architectural difference where your stability foundations exist at levels external forces can't reach is why you remain unshaken, while everyone else loses balance through having built equilibrium on circumstantial foundations. That current crisis is actively dismantling. Something powerful is spreading among destabilized observers now, what the architects call stability envy, comparative suffering, where people losing their balance are experiencing your unshaken composure not as inspiration but as threatening contrast that makes their destabilization feel worse through comparison, creating resentment toward your stability rather than curiosity about what enables it, because your equilibrium highlights their lack of it in ways that amplify rather than reduce their suffering. Most people experiencing crisis want company in their suffering. Shared destabilization creates solidarity and validates that circumstances are genuinely difficult, making collective struggle feel manageable through mutual support and confirmation that reaction is appropriate to situation's severity. But your singular stability breaks this solidarity. You're not participating in collective destabilization, making your composure feel like judgment or disconnect, suggesting either that crisis isn't as severe as others are experiencing it, or that you possess resources they lack, both interpretations creating discomfort rather than relief. Watch what stability envy creates relationally. Some are becoming hostile. Your calm feels threatening or invalidating to their panic, making them want you to lose composure so they're not alone in destabilization, creating pressure for you to join collective crisis response rather than maintaining singular equilibrium that makes them feel inadequate. Others are demanding explanation. They want to know how you're maintaining stability, hoping to access whatever you're using, though often their questioning carries undertone of suspicion or accusation rather than genuine curiosity, revealing ambivalence between wanting your secret and resenting that you have stability they lack. A few are attempting to destabilize you, consciously or unconsciously, trying to trigger anxiety or upset your equilibrium through sharing worst possibilities or focusing your attention on threatening aspects, needing you to lose balance so they're not alone in their destabilization, making stability disruption become goal-serving their psychological need for company in suffering. Some studying social psychology recognize that outliers create discomfort in groups. When everyone shares response except one person, that singular difference threatens group cohesion and creates pressure toward conformity, making your stability face social pressure to destabilize for sake of group harmony, even if individual equilibrium is preferable to collective panic. Others exploring suffering and misery loves company dynamics note that shared negative experiences create bonding. People in crisis together often form connection through mutual struggle, making someone not participating in shared suffering feel like they're rejecting group membership, creating social exclusion pressure that punishes stability maintenance. A few recognize that your stability could serve as model rather than envying or resenting your equilibrium. Destabilized people could investigate what enables it and work to develop similar foundations, making your demonstration into teaching opportunity rather than into threatening contrast, though this response requires humility and growth orientation. That crisis often prevents some attempting more generous interpretation. Recognize that your stability might help them, understanding that someone maintaining balance during crisis proves equilibrium is possible and potentially provides stabilizing influence through example or presence, making your unshaken state valuable resource rather than threatening comparison. If they can shift from envy to appreciation, the architects observe that stability envy Comparative suffering reveals that your unshaken state creates social tension rather than inspiring or comforting. Destabilized observers, your singular equilibrium often amplifies their distress through highlighting contrast between your stability and their chaos. Shared suffering creates solidarity. Your stability breaks solidarity, and instead of curiosity about what enables your equilibrium, many respond with envy, hostility, or attempts to destabilize you so you'll join collective crisis response, revealing that misery truly does love company, and that exceptional stability during universal crisis faces social pressure toward conformity with collective destabilization. Now the architects are revealing what protects your stability during crisis. You apparently developed what they call crisis preparedness, consciousness inoculation, where you've mentally and emotionally processed potential difficulties before they occurred, creating immunity to destabilization. Because you're not experiencing shock or surprise when crisis manifests, but rather are encountering situations you've already contemplated and prepared for internally. Most people maintain stability through avoiding contemplation of negative possibilities. They don't think about what could go wrong, don't imagine difficult scenarios, don't prepare emotionally for potential crises, making them psychologically unprepared when difficulties actually occur and creating shock-based destabilization when reality violates their optimistic or avoidant assumptions. But you apparently engaged in preparedness work that most people avoid, contemplating difficulties, imagining challenges, processing potential losses or failures before experiencing them, creating psychological and emotional inoculation that prevents shock destabilization. When contemplated possibilities become actual realities, consider what crisis preparedness inoculation requires psychologically. You faced feared possibilities before they occurred, rather than avoiding contemplation of what could go wrong. You deliberately thought through difficult scenarios, imagining how you'd respond and what resources you'd draw on, creating mental rehearsal that prepares consciousness for actual crisis when it arrives. You processed emotions preemptively, anticipatory grieving, pre-experiencing potential losses, allowing yourself to feel difficulties before their actual all contribute to emotional preparation that prevents overwhelming reaction when possibilities become realities, making you already somewhat adjusted to situations others are encountering for first time. Watch what preparedness inoculation creates during actual crisis. You're not experiencing shock because you've contemplated these possibilities. Their manifestation doesn't create surprise or overwhelm that comes from reality violating expectations, making your response measured rather than reactive because you're not processing both "this is happening" and "I never imagined this could happen" simultaneously. Some studying trauma and resilience recognize that anticipatory processing does reduce crisis impact. People who've thought through difficulties and prepared emotionally show less destabilization when those difficulties occur compared to those encountering completely unexpected situations, making preparedness work valuable resilience-building practice. Others exploring Stoic philosophy note that premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils, is classical practice for building equanimity. Deliberately contemplating potential difficulties creates psychological preparation that prevents being overwhelmed by their occurrence, making ancient wisdom validate contemporary understanding of preparedness inoculation benefits. A few from anxiety research recognize complexity. Some preparedness thinking builds resilience, while excessive worry creates anxiety disorders, making distinction between productive preparedness and destructive rumination important for understanding when contemplating difficulties helps versus when it harms. With your preparedness apparently hitting productive balance that built immunity without creating chronic anxiety. Some are questioning whether your preparedness was conscious, wondering if you deliberately prepared emotionally, or if life experience created preparedness through having already survived similar crises, making current situation feel familiar rather than shocking. Determining whether preparedness is cultivable practice or requires difficult life history, the architects observe that crisis preparedness, consciousness inoculation, is what prevents shock destabilization. You've contemplated difficulties before, experiencing them, creating psychological immunity that maintains equilibrium during crisis. Most people avoid thinking about negative possibilities. Your preparedness contemplated them deliberately, and inoculation through preemptive processing is why you remain unshaken. While others experience overwhelming surprise at crisis, they never allowed themselves to imagine, making their destabilization partly result of unpreparedness that your contemplative work prevented through facing feared possibilities before they manifested as actual realities requiring response. The architects are now analyzing identity dimension of your stability. You apparently possess what they call adversity-independent self-concept, where your sense of who you are and your core identity aren't dependent on favorable circumstances continuing, making you immune to identity threats that destabilize people whose self-concept requires conditions remaining positive, because your essential nature persists regardless of external state. Most people's identity is achievement-based or circumstance-dependent. They know who they are through what they've accomplished, relationships they maintain, status they hold, making their self-concept vulnerable to circumstances that could remove these identity supports, creating existential destabilization when crisis threatens foundations their identity is built upon. But your identity apparently exists independent of circumstances. You know who you are in ways that don't require success, favorable relationships, or positive conditions, making your self-concept genuinely stable because it's not dependent on externals that crisis can remove. Watch what adversity-independent identity creates during crisis. Your sense of self remains intact, while others experience identity crisis as circumstances remove status markers or relationship supports they'd built identity around. You maintain clear sense of who you are because your self-concept wasn't depending on those external factors remaining constant. Some studying identity development recognize that mature identity transcends circumstances. Developmental psychology describes progression from identity based on external validation toward identity grounded in internal values and authentic self-knowledge that persists regardless of conditions, making your adversity-independent self-concept reflect advanced development. Others exploring existentialism note that authentic existence requires defining self through choices rather than through circumstances. Sartre's concept of existence preceding essence suggests genuine identity comes from how you respond to situations rather than from situations themselves, making your stable self-concept reflect existential maturity where identity is self-authored rather than circumstance-determined. A few from spiritual traditions recognize that transcendent identity anchored in eternal self or divine nature remains stable regardless of personality or circumstantial changes. Teachings about true self versus ego identity suggest that deepest identity isn't touched by surface changes, making your stable self-concept possibly reflect spiritual realization beyond psychological identity structures. Some are envying your identity stability, recognizing their own self-concept is crumbling as crisis removes external supports, makes them aware of identity vulnerability they didn't recognize when circumstances were favorable, creating desire for adversity-independent self-concept you possess, but they lack. Others are questioning whether adversity independence is possible, suspecting that everyone's identity must depend on circumstances to some degree. They resist acknowledging your stability might reflect genuinely transcendent self-concept, protecting themselves from uncomfortable implication that identity work they haven't done leaves them vulnerable in ways you're not. A few are beginning identity reconstruction, using your demonstration that adversity-independent self-concept is possible as inspiration to examine and rebuild their own identity on foundations that transcend circumstances, recognizing current crisis as opportunity to develop more stable self-concept rather than just as threat to existing identity. The architects observe that adversity-independent self-concept is crucial component of your unshaken stability. Your identity doesn't require favorable circumstances, making you immune to existential threats that destabilize circumstance-dependent self-concepts. Most identity needs success or status. Your identity transcends conditions and adversity independence, where you know who you are, regardless of what's happening, is why you remain stable, while others experience identity crisis as circumstances remove external supports. Their self-concept was depending on making crisis reveal identity vulnerability they weren't aware they had until circumstances changed, removing circumstantial foundations of self-concept they'd mistaken for stable identity. Now something's emerging that the architects call present moment, anchoring temporal immunity. Observers are recognizing that while they're destabilized by catastrophizing about future or ruminating about past, you remain stable through maintaining consciousness, primarily in present moment where crisis exists only as current reality to respond to rather than as projected disaster or accumulated grievance, creating temporal anxiety that multiplies destabilization beyond what present circumstances alone would create. Most crisis destabilization is temporally extended. People aren't just responding to present difficulty, but are simultaneously worrying about future implications and regretting past decisions, making consciousness span across time in ways that multiply suffering beyond what immediate present moment experience would generate. But your stability apparently comes from temporal focus, consciousness remaining primarily in present rather than extending into anxious future projection or regretful past rumination that most people experience as automatic rather than optional temporal positioning. Watch what present moment anchoring creates during crisis. You're responding to actual, present, dealing with what's actually happening now rather than with what might happen or what already happened, creating clear-headed, practical engagement with immediate reality rather than being paralyzed or overwhelmed by temporal anxiety spanning past regrets and future fears. Some studying mindfulness and present moment awareness recognize that temporal focus dramatically affects experience. Meditation traditions teach that suffering multiplies when consciousness leaves present moment, making present anchoring crucial practice for maintaining equanimity during difficulties, with your stability possibly reflecting developed present moment capacity most people lack. Others exploring anxiety mechanisms note that most anxiety is temporally displaced. People aren't anxious about present moment, but about future that hasn't occurred or past that's unchangeable, making anxiety primarily temporal. Phenomenon that present moment anchoring prevents by keeping consciousness focused where it actually has power to respond, rather than where it can only worry or regret. A few recognize that crisis often isn't as overwhelming in immediate present when consciousness stays with what's actually happening now rather than extending to worst-case scenarios or accumulated grievances. Difficulties become more manageable because you're dealing with present reality rather than with temporally extended, catastrophic narratives that consciousness constructs through projecting into future or dwelling in past. Some attempting to adopt present moment focus discover difficulty. Years of habitual temporal extension where consciousness automatically projects into future or rehashes past, creates strong momentum that present moment. Anchoring must work against, making temporal focus require practice and discipline most people haven't developed. Others recognize that present anchoring might be natural rather than cultivated. Some people's consciousness naturally stays more present-focused, while others naturally extends temporally, making your stability potentially reflect temperamental gift rather than developed capacity. Though distinction might not matter practically, since effect is same regardless of whether temporal focus is natural or cultivated. A few are questioning whether present focus is always beneficial. Some planning and learning from past are valuable, making extreme present anchoring potentially limiting if it prevents beneficial future preparation or past integration. Though your demonstrated stability suggests you've found balance that maintains present focus without losing capacity for appropriate temporal extension. The architects observe that present moment. Anchoring temporal immunity is significant factor in your stability. Consciousness remaining primarily in present prevents temporal anxiety that multiplies suffering. For those whose awareness extends into catastrophic future projection or regretful past rumination, most people's consciousness spans time, anxiety-generating ways. Your awareness stays present-focused, and temporal immunity where you experience present difficulty without adding layers of future catastrophizing or past regret is why you remain stable, while others are overwhelmed, not just by current crisis, but by temporally extended suffering their consciousness creates through leaving present moment where crisis is manageable toward temporal positions where it becomes overwhelming.